So, a new video. It's been a while since we've done a video, but that's because we've been working on updating the Z1 Analyzer. There's lots of new features in version 2021.1, and we will be making videos about that, or depending on when you're watching this, we've already made them, and you should go check them out in the channel right now. We've also come out with the Z1 Designer. That is our new application that lets you create your own dashboards for the Z1 dashboard. And that is what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to do a general overview of what all the different parts of the Z1 Designer do, and show you what you can do with those. So let's go. So this is the Z1 Designer, and when you start it, this is approximately what you will see. You've got Toolbar on the left here, the dashboard window here, Layers window, Object Properties window, and you may have the Dashboard Properties window. You can actually close this by clicking on the X, and then this Windows option here allows you to display anything that you might have previously closed. So I'm going to open the dashboard window. I'm also going to move this layers so we can see the whole thing here because of my preview in the bottom right there. So when you install the Z1 Designer and the new version 2021.1 of the Z1 dashboard, it does come with a sample dashboard. So we're going to open that, and it's in Z1 dashboard, dashboards, sample dashboard, and then just open this file here. So this is what you see after you've opened it, and this is just an example so you can see what you can do and how something works in a completed dashboard. So this video is not going to be about actually designing a dashboard, just going over what the basic functionality of the Z1 Designer is, and sort of explaining things as we go. So the main part obviously is this dashboard window right here. You can move any of these windows around, and you can change their size to make it easier for you to work on as you're going. In this version of the Designer, all dashboards are the same aspect ratio of 480 by 272 pixels. And moving forward that may change, but right now it's 480 by 272. This dashboard properties window down here is high-level information such as what's the name of the dashboard, just sample dashboard, and it says right here, sample dashboard. If you change this name, then the name up here will change as well to reflect whatever you would type in here. It gives you the folder path, so this is where this dashboard is stored. So in this case, it's in Documents /Z1 Dashboard /dashboard. So sorry, /dashboards. It gives me my background color, which is black, and then my width and my height of the dashboard, and then the preview image. So I can change any color option that you see, such as the dashboard, the background color. You can change by clicking on this, and now I can choose any other color. So say I chose red. Now I have a red background. I'm going to go back to black though, because I think that works better than red on this dashboard. At the bottom here we have object properties. So if I click on anything in the dashboard design window, we get the properties of that object down here in this window. So it tells you what's the display name. So that's the data channel, and it's a gear. You can change this to be anything you want. My channel. But it defaults to the type of object when you create it. Then since this is a data channel, you have this drop down and you get to choose what data channel actually displays. So this has everything that the Z1 dashboard reads in from various SIMs, and you choose what you want here. Note that not every SIM supports every one of those, but most of them are supported, and you can check out on our website what channels are supported by what SIMs. Again, we have text color, we have decimal places, that has no effect on a gear, because you probably don't want to have decimal places in a gear, it's just one. But for certain things like brake pressures or temperatures, you may want to choose how many decimal places you have in your in your display. And then all objects have a bounding box. So as you see here, we have the N, which represents the gear, and then these 4 little circles, so that's the bounding box. And this is the coordinates of those. So you can adjust this by typing in new coordinates here. That's one way to do it. Or you can just drag and move the item somewhere else. And then a lot of this is specific to a data channel, but you can choose the font, the size, weight, style, and alignment of the text within the box that you created. On the right here we have layers. There are 2 main layers when creating a dashboard. There's the background layer and the foreground layer. So the background layer is composed of anything that is not going to change. It's just drawn once when the dashboard is initially created, and then it's never drawn again. So you want things here that are static. In the example of this dashboard, it would be things like oil temperature, oil pressure, water temperature, things like that. The rectangles that are drawn, and that's pretty much it. Everything else would change. So the shift lights change, so you'd want to put those in the foreground. The gear changes, all the numbers associated with temperatures and pressures and things, they all change. Your lap times change. This RPM bar changes, so all that goes in the foreground. Anything you want to, anything that is going to change when you're in the car should be in the foreground. And you can obviously move through these layers using your mouse wheel, or you can click and drag the scroll bar. And you can also just choose to show or not show an object. So every object has this little checkbox, and if you click it, it's hidden. Click again, it comes back. This only affects the designer. The hidden or showing value of an object in the designer has no bearing on the dashboard. Everything you create will be seen in the dashboard. This ability to hide something is just to make it easier to design your dashboard. And if you click on something, then it becomes a selected item on the dashboard, and you see its object properties down here. You can drag things up and down in the foreground or the background, and even from the foreground to the background, or from the background to the foreground. So as the dashboard is built, it draws one object and then the next one and the next one, etc., going up. So this graph object here is the last one to be drawn. So it's all the way in the foreground. If you think of like a Photoshop with all the different layers, the layers are drawn on top of each other. That's the same thing here. So at the bottom, this LED shift light is drawn first, then second one, third one, fourth one, etc., all the way up. So if you want to change that order, you can just grab and drag the object wherever you want to put it. And now this is drawn at this point. And you can even put this all the way into the background, and you can put the graph of the RPM down there. Of course, if you do that, it will only be drawn once, and your RPM graph will never ever move. So it's probably not the best idea. So we're going to grab it and move it back up to the foreground. You notice here a couple of these objects, warning oil and warning ABS. These have little expansion arrows, so if I click one of those, you can see what's inside it. And the same thing on this one. A warning is kind of a unique object which can contain other objects, and it only gets displayed when certain warning criteria are met. So for example, this warning ABS, if the ABS is turned off in the car, then all these items here will be displayed. And let me turn this one off. So now this item here, if I turn it off, this is what my dashboard actually looks like. Now, if the warning ABS happens, which means the ABS is turned off, this is what the dashboard looks like. And you can drag things in and out of the warning blocks. So if I decide I don't want this text to be in here, I can just drag it out, and now it's no longer part of my warning. If I want this front text to be in, I can just drag it in, and it goes into my warning there. Or you can just put it right on top of the warning, and it also goes in. So now when I turn this off, you can see that the items I wanted are included in it. So let me just hide those again. So that's what you can do in layers. And we've talked about the design window a little bit, but let's look at some of the how you manipulate things in the design window. So if I click on an object, I can just click and drag it around. Also, you see these 4 circles. If I click one of those, I can move whatever the point is that it is associated with around. Now, different objects might have different circles. So, for example, a shift light just has 1 because the shift light itself is a circle. So I can make that bigger or smaller. And if you're doing a line, it just has 2, 1 at each end. Multi-line would have multiple line segments, and you can click on those and move them around. But it all works the same way. You click on an object, you can drag it around, and you can adjust the size of whatever the bounding box is for that object. If there is an object which is below another one, so for example, there's the gear object here, but below it is the box that surrounds the gear object. So I can't click on that directly because I'm clicking on the gear. So what you can do is you can go over to your layers on the right here, and you can find the appropriate box for the gear. And of course I didn't actually name them after, okay, this one. So this rectangle here is the one that is surrounding the gear. So now, since it's selected already, if I click here and move things around, it now moves whatever the currently selected object is. If I click somewhere else in the design window, now nothing is selected. So now, whenever I click, it's going to choose the object at that point, which is in the foreground the most, which right now is the N from the gear. You can also choose to make this window bigger or smaller to see what your design looks like at different sizes in the dashboard. And this resizes exactly the same way that the Z1 dashboard would. So if you pull it out and make it wider without going more vertical, then your dashboard is centered. If you pull it down here, your dashboard stays at the top. And if you make the whole thing bigger, the dashboard scales out. So this allows you to play around to make sure that your dashboard looks good in all different resolutions. There are a couple of options at the top here. First is Show Grid. You can have that on or off. Then there's Snap to Grid. If you turn that on or off, then when you move things around, they will, top left corner here will snap to whatever the grid is that you're using. And if you're moving a particular vertex around, that will also snap. So that makes it easier to line things up if you have the Snap to Grid turned on. And then grid size, you can choose how big it is. So the default is 3. 1 would be very, very small, and you can go bigger if you want. If you want to go 10, you see the grid gets bigger, and then when you move things around, they move by 10 pixels each time. So go back to 3 there. So that you can use those to help you when you're designing and laying out in whatever way works best for you. The toolbar on the left here, this is where you select what you want to work with within the dashboard window, the design window. So by default, the pointer is selected, and if you hover over, you get a little tool text of what the tool does. So the select and the move tool, we've been using that. Obviously, it selects things, and you can move things. The next is the rectangle. This allows you to draw a rectangle, and all items are drawn in the same way. So if I'm drawing a rectangle, or in this case a rounded rectangle or an ellipse, you click and then just drag out to make the shape that you want. And now, since I have my rectangle tool selected, if I click again, I'll draw another rectangle. And then this draws lines, and this draws multiple line segments together. The difference between drawing multiple line segments together and just multiple individual lines is the line segments will actually connect properly at each vertex between the lines. If you draw one line and then a completely separate line and try to make them like an L or something, you'll see kind of a notch at the join. But if you do a multi-line and you do the same thing, the transition between the two line segments will be smooth. So that's the point of the multi-line tool. Text tool, you can draw text. The data channel, that's the main one, drawing things like what gear you're in, all the oil temperatures, any of that stuff is a data channel. A warning tool, this is what we talked about before. Up here, these warnings, you can place one of those on the design and then have a warning come up, and there's various ones as far as like ABS, oil pressure, pit lane, things like that. Shift lights, this is all these up here. You can have up to 15 shift lights and 6 of the warning lights, 3 on the left and 3 on the right. Units, this allows you to place various units which the user of the Z1 dashboard will have chosen. So that could be things like kilometers versus miles, or bar versus PSI, things like that. A graph, this allows you to basically graph out a data channel. So that would be useful for an RPM bar. For example, this graph here is a graph of RPM from 1,000 RPM to 8,000 RPM. And it allows you to basically create your RPM graph. You can graph other things. For example, here, this small bit of green is a graph, and it's graphing brake bias. So you can see as it moves to the rear or to the front. And then the last thing is the widget tool. A widget is basically anything else that you might want to display which doesn't fall into the above tools. And things like that are like this lap counter, or lap times, or delta times. There's a whole bunch of options underneath them. We're going to do another video going into details of these tools, but right now this is just an overview. But you should check that out and see what's in them and play with them to see what you get. So there are a couple other windows we haven't talked about. The dashboard defaults and the dashboard shift lights. So let's look at defaults first. So this currently has the 4 warning levels for your dashboard. If you're familiar with the Z1 dashboard, these are actually in the Car 2 tab in the settings, and it's your low fuel warning, your fuel pressure warning, your oil temperature warning, and your water temperature warning. You can set these to whatever you think is appropriate for your dash, and maybe you have a warning option tied into these. The user of the Z1 dashboard can override these if they want. They can choose different ones, but you're setting up what you believe are the best sort of base level for these options under your dashboard defaults. And then we'll just close that window. Then shift lights. So in this dash we have 8 shift lights. And so here you see we have shift light 1 through shift light 8 and the RPM value for those shift lights. So the RPM value is the RPM at which that shift light will illuminate. And you can enter specific numbers here, or you can say that you don't really care what the numbers are and let the Z1 dashboard figure it out based on maximum RPM. Then there's also this one checkbox for all gears use the same RPM. So since this is checked, no matter what gear you're in, these are the values that will be used to illuminate that shift light. Now, if you uncheck that, there are some cars, Formula 1 cars and a couple others, where each shift light may have a different illumination value based on the gear you're in. So if you uncheck that, now I can specify a RPM value for every single gear and for all the shift lights. So this allows you to do that. And again, this information is from the shift light tab in the Z1 dashboard. And the user of the Z1 dashboard, if they want, can override this and set their own RPM levels for your dashboard. But this is what you are setting as what you believe to be the best sort of settings for the illumination value of the shift lights in your dashboard. Just going to close this window. So that's pretty much it for an overview. And obviously when you're done, of course now I've said that's it, and a couple more things. So when you're done, file and save the dashboard. Make sure you save it, otherwise you'll lose all your changes, and then you'll have to do everything over again. You can also do save as, so if you want to copy this dashboard and make some changes, do save as, and that's the best way to create a copy of your dashboard. But hopefully this has been useful. Like I said, it's a very top-level overview of the Designer, and we'll be doing more soon. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.